The Against All Odds Podcast, sponsored by Oak Forest Recovery. Welcome to the Against All Odds Podcast. I'm RJ, and I'm here with co-host Hunter and Rachel. And today is a special podcast because we're going to hear Rachel's story.
Yeah.
Rad.
Yeah, where should we start?
We'll start from the beginning.
When I was a young warthog. It's been stuck in my head for like
young New York Rachel.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in New York in the early 90s. And I lived in a lower middle class family in a place just north of Manhattan, like half an hour outside of the city on the Hudson River. And I had a pretty, I guess, normal childhood. For as long as I could remember, I felt like different than other kids. I never really felt like I fit in. And I was actually thinking, I've had some like realizations. Like I say, I've had like a normal childhood. Like I didn't have any major trauma, I don't think, as like a young child. But more recently, I've even just been thinking of certain things that I thought were normal that might not be, you know, like there was a lot of really weird shit that happened, not in my own household, but like being at babysitters' houses or my friends' houses, like involving other kids and like, and I don't know if that's normal. You know, like there was definitely some, I would say, and you know whose story, Jess's story actually kind of like unlocked some things and made me think about some things that happened in my childhood, like being at a babysitter's house. I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 years old. And, you know, this specific house that I used to go to had a brother and a sister, and they were very knowledgeable on a lot of sexual things. And there was definitely some things that happened in that aspect. But I'm like I'm like, do all kids, you know, get into stuff like I don't really know, right? Now I'm kind of just
depends on how old. Like I don't know. I feel like if it's like a really young kid that's knowledgeable on stuff like that.
Well,
that's
now
weird.
I'm looking at it
that's
as
weird.
Right, because there was definitely some situations that I look at now as an adult that are like very alarming, but I didn't think of it like that in that time. And now I'm looking at like, why were those kids 5, 6, 7 knowing these things or trying to like carry out these type of things, right? There's a lot of my childhood that I don't really remember. Like even when I'm with my family to this day, they'll be like, oh, remember? And I have zero recollection of a lot of things. So I think that I've definitely probably blocked out a lot of things. But other than that, like I don't remember any specific like major trauma in super young childhood. I remember feeling left out. I remember being literally in pre-K and like preschool. And I remember trying to hang out with these girls that were playing like Polly Pockets, and it was a group of them and they were like the cool girls or whatever. And they like told me I was ugly and that I couldn't play with them. And I still remember things like that, right? Like I don't remember a lot of other things, but I remember that was probably traumatic to me at that age.
For sure. I feel like it's like that early developmental stage.
Yeah.
Right? Where there's like all these like sort of like life events that happen
socially,
that just kind of like shape us moving forward. Right.
And so I just remember always feeling like I was not, like I was on the outside, like people didn't like me. Or even when I had friends, like I had friends in elementary school, and it wasn't like I didn't have people to really hang out with, but even when I did, I just felt like they weren't, like, behind my back, they just really didn't like me, and I wasn't actually a part of this thing that I was trying to be a part of. And I still feel like that sometimes to this day, right? Now I know that it was more like my perception of it and me, like an internal thing with me. I don't think it was really other people so much. Like I got bullied like as a kid in the 90s. Shit was crazy. Yeah. Okay. A lot of stuff was, I used to get called, I had freckles, you know, sprinkle face. I used to get called, I had a lot of boys that bullied me. That also later turned out to be in my DMs as I grew older. Okay. So I like we talked about in your story yesterday, I was very like, I did the DARE program. I thought that if I did any kind of drugs or anything, that I was going to die. I was like, immediately you die and you go to jail, you to die, you know, if you smoke weed, you're dead. That's it. And so I was really scared of that. I have an uncle of mine who was a heroin addict, and my mom brought me when I was like probably, I don't know, maybe 10. He overdosed, and we like went and saw him in the hospital, and I saw him like he was like in a coma and all of this stuff.
And they told you it was from drugs or?
Yeah. My mom, he was in jail, in and out of jail. And he lived in Manhattan, and we went, I think my mom thought he was probably going to pass away that time. Like he had overdosed multiple times. And that was the first time that I knew he was in jail. But I had no idea like what anything like that. And then we went there that time, and I remember seeing that, and that was kind of like, whoa. I also remember I grew up right across the street from like a block park, you know? So there was a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and I remember one time one of my friends had started smoking weed, and he brought weed to the park, and I literally like took it from him, and I was like, I stomped it out. I was like, you're not going to do this. You're going to die. Like this is, I was so against drugs. But
how old were you at that time?
I want to say I was like 9 or 10.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to say I was like 9 or 10.
So drugs started entering your life like.
Yeah. I had been exposed to stuff like that, but I wasn't about it. I wasn't really about it, but
you have a brother, right?
I have a younger brother.
A younger brother.
Yeah. Who's the opposite of me. He is the sweetest angel baby. He did like everything right in his life. He's a good boy, you know? I always dealt with being very emotional. Like I felt things very, very deeply. I just had a lot of emotions that I didn't know how to control at all. And I think my parents did the best that they could, but I think that like, I don't know, you know, I had a recent conversation with my mom about this. I don't know what she could have done differently, but I was like hurting from a young age, like something inside of me, and I don't know what it was. And I look back, and my first addiction was like lying and food. Right. I was a chubby kid, actually. I was a chubby kid. And I will never forget my mom. We were like at a family party, and I would not go up and take like one. If there was a pile of something, you know, like just a big smorgasbord, I was not going up to take one bite. I was going to take, or like cookies, right? I wasn't going to take one. I was taking like the whole stack. And my mom would be like, you know, chill out. You're a gavon. Like, don't be a gavon. Like, you know, like, and I'm like, and I was. I literally one time I took I lived in an ingredient household. Like we didn't really have a lot of junk food. My dad is very healthy. Like we stuff, just, we didn't have, but occasionally my mom would buy like a bag of chips or, you know, something like that. Most of the time my dad was like, eat a piece of fruit or have some raisins. And I'm like, what?
Because your dad was Australian.
Yeah.
He grew up on that diet.
Yeah.
He didn't have the American diet.
Yeah. So one time my mom bought a family-sized bag of sour cream and onion chips, and I was 5. I think I was like 5 at this time. I went up to her room and hid and ate them in the bed, the whole entire bag, until I literally threw up.
Wow.
And then I couldn't eat sour cream and onion chips for a long time. But and I didn't think anything of it in that time. But now I'm like, that compulsion to like, it felt good to eat. Like it was doing something to my brain. And that's how I was.
Some level of escape.
Right. With everything in my life, with being boy obsessed from a really early age. I can remember like having the biggest crushes on, you know, kids in elementary school, and even back to like kindergarten. I had a boyfriend in kindergarten, and I would like obsess about this person. I was always very like obsessive. There was no like gray area. I was very like all into something or not at all.
Right.
And these are signs I didn't realize, you know, till very recently, until I got sober. But yeah, so I was very against drugs for a while. And then I guess starting to go through puberty around 11 or 12, my emotions that I had already like kind of been struggling with got way more intense, like way more intense. I was never like a bad kid up until, or like, I didn't really do like a lot of bad things. I did really well in school. I didn't hang out with like bad people. But my dad became like really strict, and all I wanted to do was hang out with like my friends. They were able to have like sleepovers whenever they wanted, go to the movies, do all of these things. And my parents were kind of like, no, you have to stay home.
Did you do sports?
I played basketball. And I did like soccer and stuff, but sports. Oh, and my parents made me do swim team. They were very like, you need to be doing these things. Right? They forced me to do swim team. We had to be out at the fucking pool at like 6:30 a.m. every single day in the summer. Yeah. So like hated that. Like I resented the hell out of that. Right.
Yeah. Why do you think they were so strict? Do you think it was just because of...
I think... And here's the thing is like my mom and my dad were very different in the ways that they wanted to do things. But like what my dad said kind of went. My dad is from Australia. I think that his dad was maybe more like that, like very kind of like, this is what you're doing. And also we never had a close knit family, like it wasn't the type of family where we're like hugging and saying, I love you. We were very like surface level, like, how was your day? Good. Okay. Like fine. We were never a tight knit family. I'm closer with my dad today than I ever was in my life. But yeah, so he got really strict. He was working in the city as like a sound editor for a long time. And then after 9/11, he got laid off. So he went from like working and being away from the home
to now being there
all the time. Cause he got laid off. He wasn't working for a while. He like ended up going back to school to be a teacher. So
how's your dad end up in America?
So I think he was friends with my mom's brother, or like, so he came here and through mutual friends, he met my mom, and then they went to Australia for a bit, and then they came back and like got married and stuff like that. I don't know. See, this is what I don't know. There's a lot that I don't, I'm not even, I literally bought both of my parents there. Have you seen those books on TikTok where it's like, Mom, I want to hear your story, or like, and they have to fill that shit out because I don't know so much.
Yeah, you're
so
like,
I got them that for Christmas.
They fill it out?
My dad has started filling it out. I don't know if my mom will do it, but it's like, there's a lot we don't, we weren't just like a very talkative. There was a lot we didn't talk about. And I think that is also like, I never really got talked in depth about like all of these things. Right. It was kind of like in the 90s, especially. And I feel like a lot of families were like that. It was just like, drugs are bad. Don't do them. That's it. Right. Like this is bad. Don't do it because I said so. There was no real education. In that time,
there was like a lack of depth, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know if that would have made a difference in my, I don't know, but it just wasn't, that's not what things were like for me. So yeah, my dad ended up being really strict. He like, and I felt even more. So I was already feeling disconnected, like kind of out of the loop of things. Right. And I felt even more isolated at that time, right? Because my friends are having a sleepover and I'm not there and I'm at home and for no reason. And I would ask my parents, like, why? Like, why? Yeah. I do well in school. Like I do all these things and they just wanted me home. Like, I guess, I don't know what the actual reasoning was. Like my dad made a lot of rules. We weren't allowed to like watch TV on the weekdays. It was pretty intense. And I didn't do well with that. And especially from him not being home to then being home all of the time, we clashed like
all the time,
a lot. Yeah. So I started rebelling because he wouldn't let me go do certain things. I would lie and I would figure out a way to like kind of, I'd be like, oh, I'm just like going across the street, or I'll be right here or whatever. And I would go and hang out somewhere else. And then I would get caught. And in 6th grade, I was supposed to have this like graduation party because elementary school where I grew up stopped at 6th grade. And so I was going to have this like big party, and my parents had said yes. And like, it was going to be in my backyard and my friends were allowed to come. So I was so happy about it. I like made invitations online on my computer, like printed them out and like put all this work into it. And then my dad caught me one time. I was not across the street at the park. I was like at another park, like 15-minute walk away. And he like pulled up.
Canceled the whole party.
And that was devastating to me. Like, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal.
For sure. But at that age,
that was devastating. Like I was devastated. I think that was like the first time like I ran away. I like literally, I didn't know anything about running away. And I like put a bunch of toilet paper in like a fucking backpack, like just toilet. I'm just going to be shitting outside. I guess that was the vibe. I think
like fruit roll-ups and like cereal.
Yeah, like the most random shit. And so I took my toilet paper bag and I went across the street to the park, and I was gone for like, I don't know how long I was gone for, but no one even noticed that I was gone. And then I was like, okay, what the fuck? And then I also didn't run away with anyone or have anywhere to go. So I just walked back inside, and I don't think anyone even knew. Yeah, no one even knew.
You didn't even get to use toilet paper.
Yeah, it was, and then I don't remember what led up to me. I got really depressed. I got really depressed.
And this is like sixth grade.
Yeah,
time.
sixth grade.
Okay.
Yeah, sixth grade. And then I started like self-harming not long after that. And I would just sit in my room. I would listen to like Simple Plan, like Perfect, and I would blast that shit and just be like hash slinging, slashering myself, like I was so like, I was just like
emotional.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Yeah. I just felt things really deeply, and I had no idea what to do. And like,
what did self-harming do for you?
I feel like it gave me some sort of relief, but also when I look at it now, like I really think I did it alone with no one knowing for like a minute, right? And then I think it also became like a cry for help. Like I remember I was just in such a fucking bad place, and then one day my sleeve had come up a little bit in one of my classes at school, and my teacher noticed. Yeah, and my teacher noticed. So then that turned into like a whole thing, and I got into therapy, and I got into Prozac, and I feel like Prozac made me fucking worse. Like I felt like that, and I'm like 11, 12, and I'm on Prozac already, and like a fucking high amount. I hated my therapist. I hated her. She sucked. To this day, I still think she sucked. Her energy was just not right for me. I don't know if I would have had a different person. Maybe she just.
But you were so young that you were forced to go. You had to do it.
Right. I had to do it. And in some ways, like the therapist was trying to work between my dad and I, because that was like the biggest issue is like, I don't understand why my dad would make me come home from school and do 2 hours of extra schoolwork while the kids are at the park, like on top of my homework. Wow. And that's like, I think it's more the Australian mindset of things, like, and maybe just my dad. I don't really know. But I just couldn't understand it, I'm like, I just want to be connected to, I want to be outside. I want to be hanging out with people. So I think I just felt really alone, and like the opposite of connection is addiction. Right. So I felt very isolated, and I didn't know what to do. And I'm on these things, and I'm self-harming. And then, I don't remember the first time ever that I smoked weed. I don't remember the first time. I remember the first time I got high, because the first couple of times that I smoked, I did not get high. Didn't feel anything, No. And I don't know if I wasn't doing it right. Like, I don't know. I had also like, there was times where I started leading up to, I would smoke cigarettes here and there. I'm like, oh, this is like dangerous. And I feel connected to, like, we have this thing now, right? Like they're like sneaking to smoke cigarettes, and I'm sneaking to smoke cigarettes. And I felt more connected in that moment than I had ever felt to anyone, So it was like, we had this thing, and we're relating on this, and we're both doing this together. And then I smoked weed, didn't get high the first couple times, but it still felt like that. Ooh, like, like
doing
I
this
don't know.
dangerous thing.
Yeah.
You were getting away with something.
Right. I'm getting away with something.
You've got a secret to share with people.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then I remember we went, my best friend and I went on like a blunt ride with like the biggest dealer in like my town. And all the dudes that I was hanging out with were way fucking older than me. I'm talking in their like 18, 19, 20s. And I'm 12. Wow. Right. Yeah. So that's a whole nother, that's like a very normal experience actually for girls at that time. It was very normal. So I started smoking, and the first time that I got high, we had got out of that ride, and I didn't feel it when we were in the car. And then I walked into a pizzeria, and I sat down, and I was like, whoa, it felt like acid. Like now that I've done acid, like that's what it felt like in that. So I had never felt something like that. And it hit me all at once. And I remember I got out of the pizzeria, and I just stood up, and because my best friend was across from me. I was like, do you feel it? Like, do you feel this right now? And I just stood up, and I walked into like the Rite Aid, which is like CVS, I walked into the pharmacy and just walked around and was just like looking at shit. And I was just like, holy
tripping out.
Fuck. Yeah. This is crazy. Right. So from that point on, I just wanted to smoke all the time. I became a pothead, and I loved weed at that time. Now you couldn't pay me $1 million because I
crazy how it turns on you. Like
yeah. So
what about alcohol? When did you start to experiment? Did you experiment?
I did. I'm about to get into a story. I can't remember alcohol as often. Like I remember alcohol in middle school, like, but before the point of smoke, I think I started smoking first. It was like cigarettes. And then I had like taken sips of stuff as a kid and you know, stuff like that.
You hadn't gotten drunk.
I don't think so. Yeah. I don't know if I remember my first time ever being drunk, actually. But I remember my first time smoking weed and getting high. And then once I opened that box, then I definitely started raiding my parents' liquor cabinet, putting a whole bunch of shit into water bottles. There's this one day that my friends and I, was like a bunch of my girlfriends, and for some reason we like didn't have school, or maybe I skipped school, I don't know, but I raided my parents' liquor cabinet and I just put a whole bunch of shit into water bottles, and I got fucking like I was gone, so gone. And then we smoked, and then we ended up at, so we had like 2 guys come like pick us up that we were friends with, and then they brought us to this fucking random house, and I passed out on the couch, like fully, like I was done, like I was gone. I was so fucked up this day. This is the middle of the day. Like this is just a random, we're walking around like the city. And so we end up at this random person's house. And then the next thing that I know, I passed out on the couch. My friends like put me on the couch, and I kind of remember them putting me on the couch. Next thing I know, I woke up in a whole different room with a grown ass man on top of me. Wow. So yeah.
Oh my God.
And I'm 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So I run outside to my friends. Like immediately I was like, I realized as soon as I like came to, I realized what was happening. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I ran outside and like told my friends, and I'm still super fucked up. Right. And I literally, I remember going outside. I'm like, dude, what the, like, this just like, can we get the fuck out of here? And I remember walking down the driveway, and my mom fucking pulls up in her Saab, right? And she's screaming.
How did she find you?
I was so fucked up that day that I don't remember. Like, I don't know how long we were going. I don't know. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. So both of my parents must have been at work, because I remember no one was home when I like took the alcohol, and I was probably supposed to be at home, right? So they probably, maybe I thought I was just going to go out for an hour or two and be back home, and that's not how it went. I think we were probably, I was just so fucked. I couldn't even tell you what the timeline of that day was. We just called it the day of doom, because it was just super fucked.
The day of doom.
The day of doom. And so I get into her car, and she's fucking, she can tell I'm fucked up. Right. And she is just screaming at me. And I'm like, I sat there silent, and I'm just like, I just went through probably like
traumatic event.
And I'm just getting fucking torn to pieces by my mom. And we get home. I only lived like 2 minutes away. And so we drive home, I get home, and I just remember I like passed out. And then I went and I think I woke up at some point, and I started drinking NyQuil, because I didn't want to deal with, like, I just drank a whole bottle of NyQuil.
Didn't want to deal with the consequences.
And then you were lit.
Matter of fact, this was actually a Saturday, because the next morning I had to serve, I was an altar server at church, okay? At the fucking 7 a.m. mass. My parents made me go through the whole, I was raised like Roman Catholic in New York, and I had to do the whole altar serving thing, and like CCD and communion and confirmation and all of these things. So I had to like put my garb, my like robe on, and like hold the cross, and like walk up with the priest, go on the altar, hold this heavy ass cross, like doing all these things, right? So
all hungover.
Well, okay, so this is what happened this particular time, because I don't think I had eaten anything like since that. So the day of doom goes right into like, wake your ass up, you're still fucking going to church and like serving the church, right? So I can't remember anything except for when I started walking up the aisle or whatever it's called with the priest, and I get up to the altar, and all of a sudden I'm holding this heavy ass cross, and all of a sudden I start feeling like, whoa, like something, I'm not feeling very well, right? And I passed out on the altar at church in front of like hundreds
Everybody.
of people. Yeah, literally, like the whole church is like, and I was just gone. And then I woke up like a couple minutes later, and got to leave. Yes. Yeah. So then I can't really remember. I think I got in trouble for that as well, because my parents were just like, what the fuck is going on? I didn't tell them. I didn't really tell anybody what happened that day besides the people that were there ever, you know, like, and so from that point on, and then the way that I walked to school, I passed this house and this man would consistently like see me around town and stop in his car and like try to like catcall me and talk to me. And like, yeah, so that was like a whole nother fucking thing that I had to deal with. So, from that point on, I just started getting fucked up all the time. I started skipping school. I started, I just didn't want to deal with how I was feeling or anything. I ran away with a best friend of mine. At one time we like took the train up to one of our guy friends had moved like to a town like north. So I stole like money from my house and we planned it and we got on the train and we like were there for like a night or two. And then our parents they would always find us like, and then I ran away another time and we spent the whole entire night with like our weed dealer, like literally just driving around all night smoking. And we went to school the next morning, I think because we just had nowhere else to go. And my parents picked me up from school. Like obviously the school probably called them or I don't know what happened, but they picked me up from school. I'm high as hell, right? I had just been smoking for like 24 hours straight. And they take me to like an adolescent psych ward. And I got there and I was like, these are my fucking people. Yeah. I loved it. I spent like 2 weeks there and I don't remember doing like any kind of therapy. I got a boyfriend there that was tight, you know, Angel from the Bronx.
Angel.
Hey, if you see this, Angel. So that's what anywhere that I would go, I would find something to like obsess. First of all, I felt connected because I'm like, all these people are like me, right? I felt connected. I got a boyfriend, which was a trend that I would follow to any kind of place like that.
Any treatment center or any place you went to.
I remember I tried to send back, like once I left, because we couldn't give like we couldn't like communicate outside of the walls. And I like tried to mail a picture with my phone number on it. And they like took my phone number, like cut my phone number out and like sent me back the picture. Oh no. It's fucking rude. I've never saw him again after that. So, life goes on. I'm just continuing to do.
How old are you this time?
I'd say at this point I'm like 13. Okay. Yeah. And then my parents decided, so I grew up in like a kind of inner city type of area. I was one of the only like white people where I grew up. And what's funny is my parents thought that like the hood culture was what was kind of fucking me up. You know, I was very, I very much, I used to like grease my hair and follow all the trends and like, I had like an identity crisis a bit, you know, because I was just like the only white, all my friends were, you know, so I'm just like, I don't know. And I think my parents were just like, what the fuck is going on? And so they decided to send me to a Catholic school. They were like, you're not going to be in public school anymore. We're not doing this. You're going to Catholic school.
So now life's getting even more strict.
Yeah, even more strict. And I had to get on a bus that was, this school was like 45 minutes away. So I had to wake up even early. I had to wear a uniform. I had to like be, you know, it was like the socks with the skirt and we would roll the skirts up and all of that. So I went to this school and it ended up being, even with the partying scene, my city, the thing is what my parents didn't realize is like where I grew up, smoking weed was not cool within the people like in my school. Everyone thought they would call you a crackhead if you were smoking weed at that age, right? Yeah. Later on, you know, high school and when people got older, but like it was not cool to do that. I was just hanging out with way older people. It had nothing to do with the people that I was hanging out with at school. It was a me thing. And my parents were always trying to find, so they were like, blame. Well,
they were just trying to find the reasons for why.
Right. Like my best friend and I, we were very similar and they would blame it on her. And a lot of the time it was like me. Like I was really like, there was something and I always noticed we bonded on a lot of things. We were both like.
So hard for parents to do that though, because they see their kid is an extension of themselves, right? So it's like they don't, it's hard to it's like a moral failing within themselves.
Right.
It's much easier to blame someone
That's
else.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
It's much easier.
Oh yeah, and I noticed that. So
my
even
parents did the same thing.
right. I think with anyone that you love, that's always like our first go-to. I can remember even when I was talking about when my uncle overdosed, he had this girlfriend, and him and his girlfriend were, you know, they were like a using couple. And I remember being like, at that age, like, I'm gonna fucking, we had to go to his apartment. I'm like, if she's there, I'm gonna fuck her up.
Right.
Like, you know, because it's her fault, you know? And that was not the case. It was definitely like a me thing. I don't blame anything on, I don't blame it on my parents. Like my parents, now that I'm a parent, I know that like, we're just no one knows what the fuck they're doing. Okay. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm doing my best. And I just hope that I'm not going to traumatize my kid and whatever. I do some things differently than my parents did because of how I felt growing up. But like, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Nobody does.
Did your uncle ever get sober?
He was on methadone until the day that he died. He was my favorite uncle. I felt very connected to him. A lot of, even within my family, my mom comes from a big Italian family, 7 brothers and sisters. And I just never felt super connected to my family. And like, it wasn't that, it's like a me. This was always just, I was always separating myself from everyone. Right. And I just never felt that growing up. I never felt that like close knit thing going on. But my uncle, because, and especially once I started using, I was like, we were the closest out of like my whole family, up until he passed away. And, so where was I? So yeah, I go to Catholic school, and Catholic schools party way harder than, and now it's like the kids in my grade are drinking, you know, they're not doing crack or anything like that yet, but they had a lot more access to things. They had more money. They had more resources. A lot of their parents were like, yeah, come drink at the house as long as you're not driving, you know, that type of situation. Like in New York, we have basements, and all of these like rich Catholic school kid had finished basements, and we would just like go down there. A bunch of us kids would be there, and we would be drinking. And the good part about me going to Catholic school is like my dad was in the delusion that these kids were better to hang out with. So he he was cool with it. He kind of lifted up, and also they lived farther away. So it was like I had to like,
so he couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah. But also, and like if they're going to drive me 45 minutes, it's only right that I stay for the whole weekend, right?
For sure.
All the memes that you make about like kind of like the throwback,
the nostalgia,
those are all like
those
accurate.
are all real. Yeah, those are like dead ass real stories. All of my POVs, like it's 2006, it's 2000. Those come from real events in my life. And so I started just drinking and smoking, and I was having a good time. This is when it was like fun, you know. I still would go home and be alone. I hated being alone. Like I was not okay when I was by myself, but I was okay when I was drinking. And I still, when we were sober, like my obsession started really early. Like as soon as I started smoking, I wanted to be smoking all the time. If I wasn't smoking, I was thinking about it. And it went the same way. Like obviously I wasn't shit-faced drunk every single day in high school, but I would be waiting. Like my brain just could not wait for the weekend and like planning, like, how are we going to get this and how are we going to get that? And eventually I started experimenting with other like harder things. And the people that I was hanging out with weren't really doing so. But because all of the people that went to this Catholic school came from all different other places. So I made like one best friend that lived in Carmel, New York. And I went over there, and she also came from public school. So she knew a lot of like public school kids there. So we became like super close, and I spent a lot of time at her house, and my parents loved her parents. So I was like allowed to be there, and she had way more freedom than I did. And we would sneak out at night and like go see like the public school kids who were doing more. They were doing, you know, a little more than just drinking and smoking. So I like tried Coke for the first time. I started doing like
And how old are you now? Like 14, 15?
14. Yeah. I'd say 14. And then by 15, I met John. So I met John he lived in Carmel. So my baby daddy, I met him when we were 15. And we met when we were drinking. Like first time I met him, he was super, super, super shy. He like wouldn't even talk to me. And then like a couple days later, he was with a group of his guy friends, and he was drunk, and I get like on my Nextel, he's like, oh, come over here, you know, like so got real bold with the alcoholic courage, you know, there. The liquid courage. And so him and we like immediately like fell in love, but like the most toxic fucking young love you could imagine. And his mom, who actually just passed last year, she was the cool mom that would lie to the other parent, let whatever the fuck go on at her house. And she would lie to my mom and be like, hey, this is Jessica's mom, you know? And I started staying up there more, and him and I became from the jump, we were like inseparable and like unhealthily. Like I could not leave. Like I could not be away from him. And so that went on. We would party like all the time. And things were good. And my parents I think they figured out pretty quickly. I think one time I refused to come home. Like my parents didn't want me to come home, and I was like, I'm just going to live. I wanted to get emancipated. I remember, because they wanted me to come home, and I'm like, no, like she'll take me in and I'll just live here. And she was cool with that. Like, she was like, you could fucking like, it was basically like a trap house. Right. Wow. And, but I just wanted to be immersed in that lifestyle of like doing whatever the fuck I want, being with my boyfriend, and like, doing all these things. And I didn't want to be at home anymore. I wanted to do whatever the fuck I wanted to. Right. And I remember that was like a fight. I wanted to be like emancipated.
And how old were you?
I'm 15, 16 at this point.
Did you end up graduating?
I did graduate. I actually graduated with honors as a full-blown fucking opiate addict. Wow. Yeah. But my parent at one point, and I don't remember what it was, I started like resenting the Catholic school, and I started using more, and I was just unhappy. And I remember I got kicked out of Catholic school. I literally didn't even do anything crazy. I think I like cursed out the assistant principal or whatever, but I was there on like a scholarship as well. So they were like, get the fuck out. Like, you're done. Yeah. And so I went back to public school. And so when I went back to public school, it had been like
back to like the same public school system that you were at originally.
The high school, which I had never been to because I left in middle school. Right. And I was so disconnected from my city at that point because I hadn't been there at all for so many years, like all those years, and I hadn't been making new relationships. I was so isolated to just hanging out with my boyfriend and like whoever was at his house that like I lost all the connections that I had. And I kind of just stayed to myself when I went back. I stayed to myself. And I didn't really have a lot of like friends. I would just wait. He would come pick me up at school, and like from 45 minutes away. Like that's how sick we were. And before we had cars, I would take the public transport. Like I would take the bus. It's like 2.5 hour like drive just to hang out for like 2 hours and then have to go back. It was like sick. Like we were just sick. So my first addiction, I would say like real addiction that I was like, was e-pills. Ecstasy was my shit. I loved it.
And when did that come in? Like 15?
Yeah, I want to say like 15. And so I started really obsessing, and like that feeling of can't wait for the weekend. But it was like this urge that I had, and the way that it took over my brain was just getting more and more like powerful. Like I couldn't focus on other things. I didn't give a fuck about anything else.
And would you use it just like with your boyfriend?
Yeah, awesome. Like a group of friends, but mostly just him and I. We would just honestly like lock ourselves in his room. That's how I was at like 16 with my first girlfriend. Yeah. Same sort of thing. And we just did ecstasy like every weekend. Yeah. I want to say for like a good 6 to 12 months. Yeah, we did it. We did it often. And there was one weekend that we could not get it. And that for me, that was just like unacceptable. Yeah. You know, that was just like, no way. Like we need to get this. Right. And I noticed that day, that was like the first kind of like, oh shit moment I had. Because we were with a group of people, and I like had a temper tantrum like a toddler. Like I was like, I'm going to die. If we do not find this, I'm not going to survive, you know? And they're like, dude, what the fuck? Like this bitch is crazy. Like she's nuts. Like I literally would throw tantrums if I couldn't get something, because that's how like important it felt to me. I'm like, I already had this in my head. I've been thinking about it. Like I can't not. So one of the days where we couldn't get it, and I'm having one of my tantrums or whatever, because John knew. He was like, if she doesn't get what she wants, she needs to get something, right? Something has to come in because this bitch can't be sober. This is when opiates come in. So his mom was prescribed. We had taken Vicodin a few different times, but like that didn't really do. I remember we would like take Vicodin and like take a nap. I didn't feel any like overwhelming like.
And there was no big euphoric. feeling, right?
So we would take Vikes, you know, in the past, but I just never really. I don't know. It wasn't something that I was like, oh shit, this is it for me. But then Oxy 80s came out. Right. And they're cutting up some lines of Oxy 80s. And I didn't even know that's what it was at that point. But everyone in that house just wanted to calm me the fuck down. Like his mom, like I'm telling you, his mom's best friend, like his dad, everyone's in the house, her boyfriend, like there's a whole bunch of people. And everyone knew that like Rachel is fucking crazy when it comes to this shit. And I realized that I was different from everyone else because they weren't. I'm like, how are you not freaking out like this?
Yeah, they
like,
couldn't get it. And they were like, all right, well, we'll keep trying, but you know.
Yeah, they're like, no big deal. And I was like, what the fuck do you mean no big deal? Like, this is a huge deal. I'm not going to make it. So my last resort was to do whatever the fuck was in front of me, right? And so they're cutting up lines of Oxy 80 and I did it and I threw up immediately. And I can't remember. I didn't have like some super overwhelming like feeling from that, but I remember I didn't feel how I just felt like I was no longer like
it took away that like insane I'm gonna die.
I actually remember his mom's best friend gave me a beta blocker like beforehand too to try to. I was like insane. Like I was actually. I wish I had fucking like I could paint a real picture because it was just so insane. But yeah, so I did that and then I was like puking and whatever, but like I felt calm. You know, I don't remember being like, oh shit, I'm fucked up or like
it's amazing.
Naughty. Yeah,
but you were chilling.
I was like, okay, like I feel okay. You know, this is okay. And I remember I didn't like that I was puking and shit like that, but it was something that was very accessible to us at that time. It was everywhere. Everybody had 80s. And like, so we just started doing that. And I don't know when my brain like clicked over to.
How were you getting money for it back then?
Well, at that point, I think we were getting him kind of just like, they were like, here, you know, for just the first couple times. But then I started having to, you know, lie, cheat, steal. I worked in high school. So I was using all of that money. I remember I found money like cash up in my attic and I would use that. And and then we would also be fronted. Like his mom would front us a lot of stuff and I'll be like, oh, like I'll figure out a way to, you know, whatever. So, and they got really expensive over a while. Like at first when we started doing them, they weren't very expensive and everyone had them. And then they started cracking down and they started getting up to like $65 per pill and $100 per pill down the line. Right. Now, when that started happening and they started kind of becoming the OPs and, you know, you couldn't sniff them anymore. You couldn't smoke them anymore. Well, no, then I went back. I actually backtracked to Roxy's because I didn't like the OPs. We used to do this thing where they were like, no, you can still do them. You just have to like put them in the micro. You have to like get the coating off, put them in the microwave, scrape it off the plate and do all that. And it just wasn't the fucking same. And I was like, I need to do them the way I don't want to just pop a pill, you know, like I don't want that. Just doesn't seem right to me. I don't want to do that. So we went backwards to Roxy's at that point and they were cheaper and they were readily available. And so then we were smoking those. And then that just went on for a while, just a lot of chaos.
Did you ever do Opana?
Yeah, I didn't really like they made me very nauseous, like way more nauseous than the original OC 80s.
Yeah. So good.
The good old days.
Yeah.
That was
the
like,
green 80s.
Yeah. So, but Opanas were not my like.
I missed the OC 80. I never did one.
Yeah. And you'll never have that
Those
moment
the golden
again.
opiate days.
You missed out.
It was Roxy's and
that was the gold rush.
I had already been sick. So the first time I got sick, I was in high school and I didn't realize, I think we've talked about this before. I didn't realize that you get sick from these things. I had no idea. My first experience with these, I had no idea that it was an opiate. I had no idea that it's basically like heroin and you get sick and you go through withdrawals. But would that have
changed anything though? If you
I don't know. But because I'll tell you, the first time I got sick, I was walking to school in the morning, and I guess I just hadn't had any since the day prior, and I was going to go through the whole school day and then go up to Carmel and fucking, do my thing. I got to school and I was like, oh shit, I am not feeling well, at all. Like I thought I was getting the flu or something, right? So I go to the nurse and I'm like, yeah, I need to go home. I'm not doing well. And I went home and I had to walk home. And when I get in bed, I felt like I had the flu. Like I called my mom like crying. I'm like, I need to go to the hospital. Like I feel like I'm dying. And I went through, I'm like, okay, I got the flu. That's it. Yeah. And then a few days into that, I talked to my boyfriend. I think I was like so sick because we talked all the time. I think I was like so sick that I wasn't even talking to anyone. Like that's how bad it was. And then he was like, oh, like you were probably dope sick. And I was like, what? And so it hadn't really registered to me up until that point. And I'm already like through it, right? Like I'm already like starting to like feeling better and I'm not like where I was a couple days ago. I was like, okay, well, the only rational decision is that I would just continue to do this shit, but just never let this happen again. Yeah. That was like the rational. Instead of being like, oh, so maybe I should never touch that again. I was like, fucking full send it, but I just will not ever let this happen again. So I continued on. And at that point, then we learned also about like Suboxone. And so we would have to kind of like, I would take like tiny little pieces when I was getting
keep
like
it in your system.
Right. When you're like waiting for the plug, like it's been all day and they're like, oh yeah, later. And oh, this and that, or I'll be back around at this time. And then like, you don't hear for them. And then you're like, oh, you're like trying to put off taking any at all. Yeah. And then you take it. And then as soon as you fucking take it, the plug calls.
It hits you up. Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And then at that point, and I would still use through. That's why I would take such tiny little pieces because I was like, when he calls, I'm gonna do it, And I can't tell you how many times I've taken the pieces and then used immediately after, and probably felt, because I'm like, oh, the blocker and whatever in it, which is just a whole nother fucking part of that cycle that just was sickening. So then I just kind of just went balls to the wall. That was our life. Now we were selling them and everyone's getting different scripts. And at this point, like, dude, everyone was doing this shit. No one where I lived, no one in my city was doing it, but everywhere where in Carmel and like the everywhere around that area, everybody was, all the white kids were doing it and the black kids weren't. So maybe if I would, I'm like, I think about that stuff sometimes. I'm like, maybe if I never left, who knows? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so shit got bad. And then I got pregnant so I graduated high school as a full-blown addict, and I did the thing. And then I was so codependent with my boyfriend that, all the kids are like, I'm going away to college and I'm doing this and I'm that. I'm like, I'll go to college, I guess. But like, I'm going to have to commute because I can't leave him. And he had like dropped out of high school, like he had like nothing going for him at all. And so because of that and my codependency, and also I was literally an opiate addict, I couldn't go anywhere or else I would not be well. Yeah. I commuted and I went to CUNY John Jay in New York City for police studies and forensic science as a full-blown like opiate addict.
What drove you to
dude,
that?
I don't fucking know. I don't know. I took forensics in high school and I got a college credit for it and I really liked it. Interesting. Yeah, I loved like CSI and like all those. I did. I thought it was really interesting. I don't know where the fucking police studies came from, and I think.
But you also at that time were living such a double life that the one side of your life really didn't look like a drug addict at all. You didn't present that way. And you probably, to a certain degree, didn't see yourself that way either. No, I really did. I knew that I was different than other people for sure. Right, like I said, that ecstasy thing, like, and I But there's
knew,
like dope fiends that you see.
But I was managing. No, I was functional. Yeah. I was very functional. I was like, this may be a little, I don't know, whatever. But I'm fine. That was my thing. At some point I could stop if I wanted to. Right. I could get through this.
Yeah. You were what, 18?
Huh?
You were 18.
I was 18. Yeah. So I was 18 and I go to college and
you lived like in like a dorm or something?
No, I would drive every single. I couldn't be away. I could not. yeah.
But you were 18, so you just moved in with.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that already happened. Like I was there
all the time.
All of my free time, basically.
What an interesting parallel life. Like imagining you as like a CSI, like
right.
You know what I mean? Like a forensic investigator.
About the police studies too, and I'm like, I must have been thinking from like a dope fiend point of view, like, oh, I could be a crooked cop. Do you know how much drugs they find? Like literally, that was probably my.
I'll never get in trouble.
No, I'll never get in trouble, and I could just take people's shit. Yeah. You know, like I could just fucking massive amounts of drugs. That was like I think my mindset on it is like when I can pull people over and just take their shit. I love that. Yeah. So that didn't work. I got pregnant when I was 18, and I dropped out of that school. I think after 2 semesters or something. And I thought that having a baby would save me. I'm like, this will save me from like this life that I don't need to do drugs anymore. And this will be the thing that like, I'll just be normal. And I was very delusional around it. So I went through my pregnancy with Johnny, and I was on like that small amount of Suboxone for most of the time, sober for most of the time. And then as soon as I had him, I was right back to what I was doing. They gave me perks in the hospital. And then I remember John came in literally like as I'm in the hospital, brought me shit in there. And I truly didn't see it as this thing that was like, at that point, I didn't see it as this thing that was like
this terrible,
evil and
demonstrous
drugs. And it was also pills that were prescribed from a doctor.
Right.
To some, not to me, but like to someone. Yeah. So I'm like, it's like classy. I remember very much being like, when I was just doing pills, the people that had graduated to heroin already, I'd be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Gross.
I'm not like that.
I wouldn't. Yeah. That's gross. Disgusting. And then not long after I started doing heroin, I was so young when I had my son that I really clung on to my addiction at that point, because I'm like, all my friends they're in college, they're going to bars, they have this freedom, and I'm here taking care of a kid. And like, this is my one thing. This is like my thing that I have. Yeah. So I felt like it made me a better mother. I felt like it helped me do all of the things that I had to do in like an upbeat, I just felt like I was better on it. And that was really hard to see later on. Like, obviously I had to do a lot of work around that.
It's a common story though.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people feel that way.
Because I was functional. Right. And that's the thing is like when I graduated from like doing my ecstasy shit and everything that I had done, it was like noticeable to other people up until that point. Like smoking weed, being drunk, doing ecstasy, being like super coked up. Like people can see that shit. As soon as I found opiates, I was like, nobody really knows. Unless I am like face down. Yeah, unless I'm nodding out. People don't know. I'm functioning like a normal member of society. And I think we see it all the time. Like, even the comments on Jess's episode of like addicts, like what they look like and what they're doing. And it's like, no, bitch, actually people that you have no idea that are in your everyday life probably could have an addiction and you would have no idea. I was really good at hiding that shit. Like and up until I got sober, like a decade into my addiction, I was still really good at hiding it, but I was living a complete double life, like complete. So yeah, I had Johnny, we got right back into the way of things. Him and his dad and I have always had like a super toxic fucking relationship. It obviously would get like way worse. We were always like together and then not together. And like our addictions were hand in hand. And then our codependency and all of this. I think we like finally broke up when he was probably like 2, and then we would like see other people and then get back together. And then he actually got sober in 2012, I think it was. Like he got arrested and he went to like a 90-day treatment center and did sober living and like got sober. He like got sober. I was still using. I was introduced to my first detox I went to when I was, how old was I? I don't know how old I was, but maybe it was like, I don't know, 18, 19. No, maybe 20. I don't know how old I was, but I went to a detox. I it was the first time I had ever been exposed to something like that. And I went in and like med seeking. Like they asked me how much I wasn't taking any Xanax at that point. And I was like, I'm taking 100 a day, you know? So they give me like as much stuff. They had me on methadone.
What got you to go to detox? Like,
I think
what led
my
up
mom,
to that?
at some point, my mom had, with smoking the pills, this is before I went to heroin. So the first time I went to detox, I was just doing the Roxys.
Yeah.
And my mom had found like the tinfoil and like my hands being black and shit, black shit everywhere. Yeah. I tried to deny it as much as my mom, when we were still doing the 80s, I would write down in my high school planner. I literally have this planner still at my house, like in a memory box. I would write down in my planner the days that we got pilled. I would like write like a P with like a circle and how much we owed or how much I paid for it, like to try to keep track. Because my brain would always try to be like, okay, like how can we like make this work? And how I only do them this day and like, whatever. I was just like, my brain was consistently like, how can I do this successfully? How can I make this work? So what was I saying? So John got sober, or no, I went to detox and they put me on methadone in that detox. And I was not ready at all at that point. I don't think I had any real will to get sober because my parents were just forcing me at that point. Like I willingly went.
Right.
But I don't think I was like,
you were trying to get sober, felt like you really had like a terrible problem.
I was like, this sucks that I get sick and stuff like that. Like that sucks that I need something to like function through the day. But I don't think I still was very much like, I am handling this, like, I'm actually thriving. But I went and so they had me on methadone. I was med seeking the whole time. I was doing the jumping jacks in the hallway to get more Klonidine, like I was more fucked up in there than I was like outside. And then on like day 7 or 8, my insurance cut off and I'm still on this high ass dose of methadone. And they're like, sorry, like you gotta go, like you gotta go. I do remember like being in a meeting in there. They took us all to like a big meeting hall and I was like nodding. I was so fucked up in there. So I wasn't able to like have an experience at that point with the 12 steps or anything, but I met people in there and I always just knew that I felt connected to other people that were getting high. Like those were my people. Like I knew that now. Right. And so I left that detox. I went home and I had to detox cold turkey from that methadone and everything else. Cause I was worse off.
Oh yeah. I remember you
I was
said that.
worse off from being in there. And I remember I tried to take NyQuil to like get through the withdrawals and I started hallucinating. It was really fucking bad. And I think like a week in, my uncle that I was just talking about, like my uncle who's on methadone and shit, he was staying with us at that time. And I like let my mom and dad like let me take the car to like go to a meeting. Right. And before then, I was doing NA at this time, and NA in my area, the meetings were kind of far away. So I picked one that was close to Carmel where I knew I could like stop in and like
finagle something.
And I relapsed like before that meeting. And then just went on with whatever. But I was really good at hiding it. Like every time I would get caught doing something, I would just like, I have to be a little smarter. I just got to figure out how to not do this. I then was introduced to heroin by like an ex-boyfriend of mine who's now passed away. And I was sick. I was sick as fuck. And like I said, I was very snooty. I was like, that's dirty. Like, you never know you don't know what you're getting and this and that. And I just ended up being so sick and in such a place of desperation that I was like, all right, fuck it. But I was scared. Like I still remember being like, heroin? Heron? That's scary. The pills I was never really scared of like that because it's like, oh, it's like from a doctor, Right. But when I got to heroin and then when I realized that it does the same, makes me feel the same way, if not even better. And it's way cheaper.
You're like, oh, this is it.
Fuck it. I'm like, okay, so now I'm doing heroin, right? So I started using heroin and then that just went on and on and on. And I was just using heroin. I went to treatment my parents caught me again. Like, so in New York, we have like the bags, right? We have like the wax baggies, and I would always save my bags because when shit got bad, I would like scrape them out.
Oh, yeah, me too.
So yeah.
And you were smoking too, right? You were smoking it? So
and sniffing. So we have China. So I was also snorting.
Got it.
Yeah. So
in New York, it's these like little wax paper baggies with different stamps.
Cute little stamps.
That brand the different
different drug dealers.
Have you ever seen like American Gangster?
Yeah,
it's exactly like that.
It's still like that.
Exactly like that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, now I don't know. I've been out the game for a while.
I'm sure it's still like that.
Yeah. I don't know if there is heroin anymore though. I think it's all fentanyl
It's hard
at
to
this
find,
point.
I think. But here we had all the brown Mexican powder.
Yeah.
And so we'd smoke it off foil. And then you'd have these foil tutors that you'd use.
Yeah.
And then after you
scrape them,
you'd open up the foil tutor and then you could smoke that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like the best.
Yeah.
It was like like
concentrate.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude. It was like the wax.
The good shit.
You know
That's what I
mean?
used to do
like,
with crack. You know, I was
right.
but so I was doing heroin, and my parents started catching on. They knew it at a certain point. Like I would leave. I moved when John and I broke up. I started being more at home than I was, and I didn't care as much. Like when I was just super fucked up, I just didn't care as much about anything. I guess I was like, fuck him now. Like, I'm good. Whatever. I'm hanging out with other people. I worked at multiple different places when I was using, and I was super functional. I got fired from one job, and not as really a result of my addiction. Like I would show up to work if I was sick. I would show up, like even in my addiction, because I knew that I had to get that money. Like that was part of my, even though I was hustling and I was stealing and I was doing, that was a big part of the money that
that was like a mainstay. It was a staple.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I worked consistently throughout my addiction. I lost one job, and then I really didn't have much at that point. My parents kind of knew about, like, they knew something was going on. At a certain point, I think John broke my cell phone. My parents had kind of like suspected I was using, so I didn't have a cell phone. I remember being at my parents' house, and like I'm calling plugs off the landline, and I'm having them like try to come meet me. And then I started middlemaning even more than I ever had, because that was how I'm charging, like I'm charging white kids from wherever. I'm like, oh, well, it's $100 for one bag, like I'm making a lot of money. That's how I like fed my habit. And I started just doing that with multiple people. I would take them and just tell them the price is way more. And, but then it was a lot of work. Like it was a lot of work, and
it's like a full-time job.
Literally it is. So I started doing that, and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to feed my habit. And I also, like I said, through this point, being a parent and being a mom was still very important to me. And I was an actual delusion that I was a good mom. Like because I was showing up and doing all of the things, I really thought that I was like, I'm fine and everything is cool, and I'm a soccer mom and all these things. I ended up, I guess I got caught again somewhere in there, and I ended up going to Crossroads. My mom got a scholarship for me, because my parents were the type, they were like, we're not paying for treatment.
Yeah.
We're not, like, this is on you. Like they were never like, oh, you're going to go to whatever you need, or, which I'm kind of grateful for, because when I went to treatment, I was actually very appreciative of the process. So I went to Crossroads, and I had an amazing experience there.
This is in Antigua.
Yeah. So I went there. I had an absolutely amazing experience there. And
Eric Clapton's
spot. Yeah. And that was the first time that I was like, maybe I can actually do this.
Right.
Like maybe I can actually do this.
How old were you at this time?
I think I'm like 21.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm 21. So maybe 21, 22, around that area. And
do you remember what it looked like leading up to you going there?
I don't really.
Okay.
I do remember the night before I went, my mom had to give me some like cash for medical expense or something. She had to give me some. My bags are packed to go to treatment, and I had to get high one more time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I took that money. She gave it, I finagled some way that she would give it to me then, and I had my plug come meet me. My parents are trying to have me on like lockdown.
Yeah.
And I would always find a way. Like, had my plug literally pull up like right outside my house and did shit. And then my mom realized within like 30 minutes that the money was gone. And I remember it being a fucking huge thing and just like a blowout. And my parents are like, what the fuck? Like, my mom, you know, it was just whatever. So I go there, I had a really good experience. And I remember I went for like the 28-day program, and they had an option for 6 weeks to go. And I like begged them to like let me stay. Like, I was begging. I'm like, please, I need more time. This is the first time ever that I think I could actually do this. Like, I need more time. They didn't let me. I was a scholarship kid there, like, you know, and what, I get it. They were like, no, there's not much more we can do for you. You know, like, you got this and whatever. I went home. I went to an IOP. I was going to meetings, like 90 meetings in 90 days type of thing. And I was an NA girly in New York. I even branched out to AA at that point because there wasn't enough meetings for me to get to in the NA. So I would go, I went to this early bird meeting. This is my first experience with AA. I go to this early bird meeting at like 7 because I'm so determined to like 90 and 90 and I'm doing this. And I go to this meeting and I raise my hand and I say, I'm Rachel, I'm an addict. Wrong decision. And 2 old timers came up to me at the end of the meeting, and dudes, and they were like, this is not where you need to be. Go to the other fellow, you know, like whatever. Wow. And I was like, fuck, dude. Okay. I'm never going back to AA ever again.
I've heard on the East Coast, especially back then, it was like very.
Yeah, dude. So I was like, fuck AA. I'm never doing that shit again. Now, mind you, I had been in and out of the rooms for a long time at this point, and I had never actually done the steps. Like, I had never actually done the work. I would and something I don't know why, like, because I think I went to meetings for years and I was in and out. I was picking up white chips every day. Like, I was literally in and out so often, and I would just consistently go back, but I would never, and they say it in every meeting. It's like, get a sponsor, work the steps, do these things. And I'm like, I just didn't hear it. Something in my spirit just didn't. I never heard it.
I also feel like that's like the, you know, going to AA can be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I was there for that.
You get to meet a lot of people, and it's like, I want to feel good. Right. And going to AA, I had the same experience. I mean, my first, you know, years of dry sobriety was like, I went to AA, but I had a lot of fun. Yeah. And I went because it was fun. I'm like, oh my God, I got friends, connection. This is like great. Oh my God. But like getting a sponsor and doing work just seemed kind of not fun. Yeah.
It wasn't like, even that for me. I just think I just truly didn't hear. I didn't think I needed that part, I guess. I don't know. I didn't, because I never even considered it. I think for a lot of
people, it's hard to understand. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't really understand what that even means.
You just go to the meetings, you'll be okay. But it did not work out like that for me. And I couldn't understand why I kept fucking relapsing. And at that point, I think throughout my whole addiction, especially with the opiates, there was part of me that really wanted to be sober. Like, I did not want this control that it had on me, and I wanted to be free because I was a fucking slave, right? That's what happens. I'm like, I don't want to have to wake up every single day and not be able to function and be sick and do all these without this drug. Like, this sucks. So part of me always really, I consistently was in the meetings, in and out, all of the time. I would go to meetings high often. And something just always, I felt accepted there. Like, I felt like that was my place. I just couldn't figure out. And the suggestions that people would give me, I wasn't ready to hear. I just, I really thought that there was a way that I could do it my own way. And I was like,
What did your parents say whenever they realized that you relapsed again? Like, how'd they react to it? After Crossroads.
I don't think they knew for really. I said, I was really
you just played good it. You just kept
at hiding it. Like, I would do whatever. At that point, my parents had like separated. My mom was really, she would like look me in my eyes, look at my pupils. My dad wasn't as like intense when it came to those things, and I was functioning. When I got back from Crossroads, I went to IOP. I did a dental assistant course, and I got a job all within 90 days of me being sober. I relapsed on my 90 days. Because I was like, wait, I'm literally 90 days? I had never. I'm like, I'm cured. I can drink. You know, let's go to the bar. And so I was working I had a full-time job now, like a real job. Like, I'm in a dental field, and I'm doing the things, and I'm taking care of my kid. And now I'm just like starting to party a little bit. I got a normal boyfriend when I got back, and he didn't believe also that I was what I said I was. He's like, you don't really need these. I would bring him to meetings with me.
Yeah, he's like, what?
He's like, you're not like these people. Like, he hadn't met me like before, right?
Yeah. And then you unleashed the demon.
Well, his mom. So I very quickly into us dating, his mom passed away from cancer, like really quickly. And one day when we're in his house, we found her old meds, and I had gotten my wisdom teeth out, and I said, I was so determined to do it with no medications. Right. I had 4 impacted wisdom teeth that I needed surgery for. And I'm working through this pain. My fucking face was like this. Like it was really, really painful. And the pain went on. Like it lasted. It was bad. And one day I was I think I was by myself at his house. I don't know if he was at work or whatever. And I knew that those were there. And I took a little bit and it fucking helped. And it was just like this slippery slope down, back to the pills, and which brought me back to because at first I was like, I'm only going to do the pills, because it's like these rationalizations that we say it's not as bad or whatever. I'm only going to do it one day, like you were saying yesterday. I can't do it 2 days in a row, like just can't do it, and I always would. And so I just got back into everything super heavy again, and that's just what my life looked like for years. And I was functioning, and I would go to work sick. I would push through whatever I had to push through. I would hide it really well. And I would also be like selling drugs and running to the city and like fucking doing crazy shit after and between the times I'm working and not. So then the infamous crack story, right? I will go very, very quickly through that. I would self-detox myself a lot. I would try, because like I said, I couldn't understand that it was like a spiritual problem. I couldn't understand that it was like in my spirit and in my head. It wasn't like a physical thing. And I couldn't understand that why I had detoxed so many times, and I just couldn't. I would get to 2 weeks. I would fully detox myself at home. I would like take off of work if I needed to for a day. Like I would take off that Friday. I would time it perfectly. I would have someone watch Johnny. Like he would go to his dad's for the weekend, and I would time it perfectly so that I could get on Suboxone within like 48 hours and a small amount, and then just taper down for a few days, and then I would just be sick, only a little sick, but still sick. And I would get to like 2 weeks, and I would fucking relapse every time. And I did that probably like 100 times, no joke. I would go through the whole fucking process. I would buy these comfort meds of my own, and I would go through the whole process, and I just kept relapsing.
Such insanity, right?
Right. And I could not understand it. I would be crying. I'm like, I'm 2 weeks into this. I don't want to do this. I'm doing all the things that I think I'm supposed to be doing. Like, why can't I stop? And it wasn't this thing of like when people say you could just will it away. Like it was so strong. That was so strong. There was no way that I could fight it with what I was doing at that point. So then one of these times where I was detoxing, I decided to do crack in like the window that I had to wait to take Suboxone. Cause I think I would usually just take a bunch of Xanax and go to sleep for that's what I would try to do.
You couldn't get any Xanax.
I think this time I couldn't get any Xanax. So I was like, what else can I do to like take my mind off of whatever? And I'm like, I don't like uppers. Like that's just, there's no way I'll get like addicted. I had done crack a couple times and I didn't like it. I didn't like it the first couple times. Then I'm dope sick. I do the crack. I feel like absolute fucking shit. That is so bad. Don't ever do that. Yeah. Don't do crack to begin with, but like, don't ever fucking do that when you're dope sick. Of course, like, ugh. And amplifies it. So I immediately go get dope, right? Like I immediately go get heroin, and then I do them together. Yeah. Because I'm like, gotta finish it.
Then you found the magic.
And then mixture. I was like, this is it. I was like, this is it for me. Right. And so from that day on, I went on a 7-8 month all day, every day crack and heroin binge. And I worked through this process. I was still functioning, but I think shout out to crack, because if it wasn't for the crack, I think I was so functional on opiates and making shit look good on the outside that I think I would have kept going until, you know, what, I don't know, until something, right? The crack brought me to my fucking knees. It got really bad really quickly. I was already skinny. I lost so much weight. I started showing up late to work because I wasn't sleeping. I started leaving during my lunch break to get more, you know, like I was not able to
were
sit.
All coming undone.
Yeah, I was not. My job as a dental assistant, I wasn't even able to sit through one procedure without saying, like, I think I told my boss that I had like a bladder infection, like something. I had to go, and like every 5 minutes, I couldn't sit with Johnny and watch a show anymore at home. I needed to be out the door and like doing this shit. Started cooking crack, and it was bad. It was really bad. And it also mentally like tore me apart. I was not well because I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't taking care of literally anything. And one day, thankfully, my old counselor that I had gone, that IOP that I went to when I got home from Crossroads, I got really close with my counselor there, and he stayed in touch with our group. He was like filming a documentary, and so we were all like really close with him, and he would reach out to me periodically. I think he knew, you know, I was out here not well, and he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey kid, like, how you doing?" And I was like, fuck, I'm going to kill myself. Like I'm not well. Like I need help, you know? And he got me into a treatment center like that day, like told my parents and like fucking all of this. And it was finally like every other time prior, I wouldn't go to treatment because I had this job, because I had my kid. There was all these excuses that I had, but I was so at the point. And before this also, I overdosed, just rewind a little bit. I had a very near fatal overdose on May 28th, 2017, where I was having a family barbecue, and I did this was when fentanyl started coming around. I had done it prior, like it started being cut in a lot of things. I did one bag up in my room, and I come downstairs and I go to grab a beer out of the cooler, and that's the last thing I remember. I face planted onto the concrete, out cold, like dead, no heartbeat, no nothing. And thank God the kid that my friend Chris, who's also dead now, he was the one who brought it to me, but he is also the one who told, like he had left and come back, and I was with a bunch of normal friends, because I went through all these phases in my addiction, right? I tried to like be normal and go to festivals and like just do all these phases. So I had like normal friends, and then he was really the only one knowing that I had like relapsed pretty bad in what I was doing. And thank God because my friends just thought I was like passed out drunk. They brought me up to the bathroom, were trying to like throw water on me. I woke up in my bathroom to the paramedics on top of me, and they're like, "What did you take?" And I'm like, "Nothing." You know, like of course, that's the first thing. And then I feel my face, right? I feel my face. This tooth, I had smacked. I'm tall as fuck.
That's the videos of you.
I had smacked my head, full body weight, full out onto the concrete in front of everyone outside on my patio. And so I cracked. This tooth is fully bonded right here. This tooth was pushed back. And I literally, as I'm down, they're taking me down the stairs in the stretcher. My face is fucking bleeding. I'm leaking blood. Like I full on face planted. And I had never, normally it's like nod out and like, okay, maybe you die, maybe you overdose. But like I had never even seen someone else fall out like that. I don't know what it looked like, right? Because the last thing I remember, but people were like, it was fucking crazy. So as I'm going down the stairs and they have me in the stretcher, I'm still not admitting to doing anything. And I'm just trying to push my tooth back into place because it was like all the way back. Thank God it went back the right way because, and I tried to give my parents the story of like, oh, like I took a Xanax that maybe it was laced, you know, like I just wouldn't admit to the heroin because that was like my safe. I needed it. And I got a CPS case because of that, because my son was there and like there was kids there. It was just fucking terrible. I also like got through that CPS case by faking tests because I just couldn't get it together. But then fast forward to when the whole crack brought me down and all of that, I finally was willing to go to treatment, and none of that shit was enough. Like, you would think overdose, right? You would think all of these consequences that I had would make me want to go get help. But the way your brain is set up when you're in that space and how delusional you are and how much you rationalize things is really fucking crazy.
Right.
Like, and I couldn't see any of it until I got sober. I couldn't see how actually insane and sick and delusional I was. I was sick. Okay. Right. There's a lot of situations that I look back on now and I'm like, I cannot believe I did that. I cannot believe I put my son in a situation like that. He would hang out with me and my dealer. We were all friends, right? Like he was in all of these situations with me, and I was really good at hiding it still, but like, it's fucked up.
For sure.
So I go to Austin and I go to treatment and I do detox, and I accidentally brought heroin with me, and I did that while I was in there, but it was fine. I went to residential and I got a boyfriend. I got a rehab boyfriend. I wasn't fully ready to like let go and let God on every situation. I still was trying to have my little things. We both like went to the same sober living. Like, he was in the men's house, I was in the women's house. I wasn't fully focused. I did get a sponsor and start working the steps, but I was not. He was my higher power at that point. And I can see that now, right? I got to 60 days out of that treatment center, and I got hit with a craving, and I went out. I had no defense against it. Like, I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't do anything. I had an amazing day. There was nothing even that set it off. I was sitting in a meeting, and all of a sudden I just got hit with this, like, you need to get high, like right now. Like, don't tell anyone, run, go. You need to get high. And I'm like, all right. But I remember, like, in trying to set that relapse up and like the steps that go into, I'm in Austin, I'm in a new place. I don't know people like that. I had to like call different people. I'm like, what, how can we make this happen? You know? I remember being like, fuck, I really do not want to fucking do this. Like 60 days, that's a long time. Like I was just, I don't know. Another girl in my house had relapsed, and I like kind of suspected her of it. And so I asked her, and then all of a sudden I'm having a relapse party with a bunch of people that came, because I'm like, yeah, we're getting high. You know, we're going to the hotel and we have a relapse fucking party. And
I think I know one of the people that were there.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it on here.
Yeah, so we have this like relapse party of all these people who just kind of like AMA'd or, you know, whatever. We all decided that this is what we're doing. And we had fun, I guess. We were all just getting high. I wanted to find crack. I found tar. I didn't like tar. I wasn't my jam. And then I wanted crack, right? Because I wanted my two things. I was trying to recreate this thing that I had back home, and, you know, just always chasing that, like that exact feeling that you're never going to get again. And so there was no crack, there was meth. I was like, well, might as well try that, you know, might as well. I didn't like meth. I stayed up for 7 days straight. By the end of that relapse, I was by myself, pulling like my pubes and my body hairs out and picking myself with tweezers in a motel. No one would talk to me. I was miserable. That whole relapse was like fucking just sick. Like There was a lot of really sick shit that happened during that week. And most of the people that I was on that relapse party train with are dead now. Wow. I think maybe 2 of us are alive out of that group. Anyways, I begged my treatment center to take me back. And do you want to know how delusional I was? Okay, so this is how my brain worked. And like, even in the process of my relapse, I was like, oh, they loved my personality so much that they will take me back for free. Like, I dead ass was because I, you know, when I'm sober and I'm very lively and I talk to everyone, and I felt like they loved me, and I was like, they will take me back for free. I know they will. You know, like my ego and my absolute fucking delusion. And that was not the case. My dad had to like cash pay for me to go back. And so I went back, and this time they gave me some rules, and they were like, listen, you're going to be on a boy ban. No boys. You're not allowed to talk to any boys. You're not allowed to communicate. You need to do all of the things that you need to do. And I got a new sponsor, and I got into the work, and I actually did not talk to any boys this time. And that was the one thing that I did different from everything else. So I was able, when I removed
you eliminated the distractions.
Right. And that
You eliminated the feel-good thing that would pull you away from really focusing.
Yeah, exactly. And I fucking have been sober since April 6th, 2018.
Right.
So it's fucking, yeah.
You got to let go of everything.
Yeah. You do.
In order to gain everything.
I went step by step. Like, it really took me a long time. I'm very hard-headed. I really, really, truly believe that I could do it my own way, you know? And that was, the boy thing was huge for me because that was like that was immediately when you remove the substances, you need another source of that dopamine.
Well, it's like we're feel-good comfort seekers, right?
I'm a lover girl, you know? That was it. I'm a lover girl. And so I would always find that. And once I removed that, I fully was able to focus on my program. Right. And I had a completely different experience with AA in Austin. At first, when they were taking us to AA meetings, like even when I was in treatment, I was like, oh, fuck. And then I saw that it's completely different. And then they also have HA and CA and CMA that all work out of that book. And it was like this experience that I had never had with AA. I had a completely like different 180 experience that I loved, and it saved my fucking life.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And here I am today.
Yeah. So walk us up from that moment to now.
Yeah.
Like, give us the abbreviated version of like early sobriety, finding some success.
Yeah.
Building your online sort of personality.
I know. What the fuck?
You know, like it's a miracle. I mean, there's
so
many
truly
miracles.
I never thought my life would look the way that it looks today. Right. Like never. Not even when I first got, like, you couldn't have told me that any of this, none of this. So once I got into the work, my life opened up tremendously. Everything that I looked at, I looked at everything differently in my life. I finally, like, that obsession was removed very early on for me. I was very blessed to have that, right? Because a lot of people do not have that experience. A lot of people struggle for a while, and I didn't. I had that, like, I had a spiritual experience, and it was removed, and I continued to do all of the things that people suggested of me. Finally, like, it took a long time for me to listen to anyone else, but once I did, my life just changed tremendously. I worked, I got a job, and I decided to stay in Austin, which was a really tough decision to make, but I realized that I had to be like 100% in my recovery, and I needed to give myself a foundation to be successful and, you know, do that. Because I had never given myself that time prior. So I got a job, and I got an apartment, and I got my kids down to Austin, or my kid at the time. And then John and I got pregnant. That wasn't planned. It wasn't in the plans. I went to New York for a visit, and then came home to Austin, and boom, pregnant with Silas. And then he immediately, and now mind you, we have always had this really toxic, very toxic, very, very toxic relationship. We definitely do better apart in that aspect. And we were like, okay, it makes sense to just try to make it work. You're sober. He's sober. I'm sober. Maybe it'll be different this time. Yet only he wasn't fucking sober. He didn't tell me before he moved down to Austin that he had started drinking socially again. He got sober, and he stayed sober with no program or anything for 5 years. Got it. Which was insane to me. Right. So there was a part of me that was like, you're not a fucking addict, dude. Yeah. If you can do that, you're not, you know? And now I know now I learned the hard way that was not the case. He had started drinking. He got a job in the service industry, and he started taking Adderall, which turned into fucking meth, and then turned into like the blues, and then turned into him selling it. And I tried to kick it immediately, like within 2 weeks of him coming down to Austin, I was like, I was trying to kick him out, and and now I'm pregnant, and now I'm like, fuck. And he was very, very, very fucking sick, like very, very sick. And now I'm sober, and I'm pregnant, and I'm dealing with it, and I'm about to raise a baby alone because he's out here fucking in these streets being a mess, you know? So it was just not what I had anticipated it to go. It didn't turn out how I like planned in my head. So yeah, I kicked him out, and my boys and I went through, Silas is born. He's still, 3.5 years. I got an order of protection because he was insane. Yeah. He was very much insane. And that was a really quarantine happened, the pandemic, and I'm by myself and I'm with these kids, and during that really, really hard time in my life, I download fucking TikTok during the quarantine because Johnny was out here doing like all the little,
little TikTok dances.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I got to do something, I'm here with a newborn and a child. I need to do something. So I downloaded it, and I can't dance for shit. So that didn't work out for me. And I just started getting on there and like ranting about postpartum stuff and like, with my humor. And I had a super viral video and it popped off, and I don't know what the fuck happened, dude.
Yeah.
People liked me, which is I still to this day, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Are you sure? And so I wasn't at that point. I didn't think that it would get to the point where it is now. I never looked at it as a career opportunity or an avenue of like financial freedom or like making all of these real life connections. At that point, I was just on there for fun, right? I'm like, oh shit, this is really weird and cool. Down the line, I started getting a lot more opportunities, and it's just turned into this. It's my full-time career now. Yeah. And here I am sitting with you guys as a result of TikTok. Hopefully is not going to be banned.
Good news. They're going to get an extension.
Oh yeah. No, I saw that. I saw that.
Hopefully.
So yeah, I mean, my life is just never, ever, ever would have imagined.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Miracles.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy what we have to go through
to get to the other side, right?
Just to get past that stubbornness.
Yeah.
And that like, I'm going to do it my way. Mm-hmm. And that like, I always, like when I was sponsored a lot of guys, I always talk about the analogy that always made the most sense to me was like, AA to me was like, or getting sober and actually following spiritual principles was like, you were going to drop me down an endless, bottomless hole. Like imagine it's a hole in the ground, right? Black, I can't see the bottom, and I'm going to free fall, right? And like so much of me always in that moment, my automatic reflex is to grab onto things. Girlfriend or boyfriend, right? Or like some level of comfort or something that's going to make me feel somewhat okay. Right. And like where the miracle I think actually happened is when I took that leap and I didn't grab for anything. Right. And I just fell. Right. And then I realized like that was where the freedom was.
Yeah.
Like I'm
surrender, like letting go.
I'm not going to hit the bottom. Like this is not going to be this terrible thing. And actually it becomes like this super incredibly beautiful thing. Yeah. Where miracles occur. Right. So I don't know. It's amazing. I just think about, the 100+ times of you trying to self-detox and like maintain this life and like go to this dental office and like taking care of a kid and just all of the management of all
it was
of
a lot of work. Yeah. It was a lot of fucking work.
And that's how stubborn we are.
I was like, I'm gonna make this work. I was like, I need to. It was a lot of work. So I think that like I was watching Intervention last night and I watched a few episodes of that, and the relief that you see, even though like these people aren't automatic, they're not in sobriety, even the relief that you see when they walk into that room and like they say like I'm going to treatment, the relief that I noticed on their faces. I used to watch Intervention in my active addiction to just be like, these people are just like me. Like in a sick way. Like as I'm getting high with them, right? It's like a funny thing. I'm like, okay. Now I watch it to see like I fast forward a lot in it. Like I like to see like the end. I like to see like the intervention and then the end and like the result and the update and the relief that you see of just being like, like I don't have to it's a lot of fucking work being an addict. It's and it's so much easier to be sober, but it's not because like of the it's this weird like balance. Being sober is a lot easier than being in active addiction, but it's such a simple thing that can be so hard. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
When were you first open about being sober, like on TikTok and your platforms, and what was the reaction?
I can't really remember exactly. I've always been pretty open about if I see on my Facebook memories, I can't tell you how many times I got to like 7 days, you know, like of my detoxes. And I have memories from like years and years and years. It's like 7 days today.
No, I don't mean that. I mean like after you blew up.
Oh, after?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay. I don't really remember. I think I think I landed on maybe recovery. I don't know. I'll have to go back and check like what the first time was. I think what I started doing was making like funny sounds. I was like, oh, okay, this would be good. This would be good to like, and just fuck around and like, let's see how people react. Yeah. And I got a really good reaction, and I got people being like, oh, this is like so relatable and things like that. And then I found like sober talk and recovery talk and all that. And then I was just like, oh, I'll do more of this because this is like my vibe, you know? Yeah.
Love that.
Cool.
Cool.
This is great, man.
Yeah.
Loved it.